Muted.
Good afternoon, everybody. And also I will be monitoring the chat. So if you have questions, feel free to send them via chat. And I see some people are still arriving, so which is good. So the agenda for today is on your screen: general announcements, 8 a.m. reporting, contract amounts, lengthening the school year, and the monitoring tool. And the PowerPoint and some handouts were emailed to you earlier this morning. So, and if you don't have it, just email me and I'll send it out. General announcements. Some people were wondering, and then they're questioning why our list has gone down. It's because, unfortunately, during this school year, and last year it was Poyama that closed, but this year we had 4 sites closed. Lithia Springs and Ashland, which Southern Oregon ESD had the contract for. Family Solutions in Central Point, which Southern Oregon ESD had the contract for. Youth Villages, which closed, which is at Merrillhurst, and Clackamas ESD had the contract, and Metzger Heights from WESD, which closed.
So assessment RFP, it's time again for us to look at the contract for what we provide now for pre and post assessments, which is Let's Go Learn. So in order to do that, the state requires us, because it's a competitive bid, to send out a request for proposals to the field, and it allows whoever may be interested out there in proposing, picking up that contract with ODE to submit a proposal. What we need, though, is we need folks from the field to provide, to act as a stakeholder group to help us with input around reviewing the proposals and making a decision about who we feel would be best, who would best serve our needs. So we're asking for folks from the field, if you're interested in having input in the Let's Go Learn, or what will be the assessment contract moving forward, that you reach out to Sam and let him know you're interested in it, or if you have questions, we can follow up and let you know kind of what your role in that would be and how that process works.
Yep. And the stakeholder group, as Mitch mentioned, will have representatives from JDEP, YSEP, and long-term care and treatment. And 3 years ago, the representatives from long-term care and treatment were Patrick MacArthur from Multnomah ESD and Brent Workley from Three Rivers School District down in Grants Pass. So
if you're interested, or if you have questions about what that entails, please reach out to us and let us know, so that we can let you know, because we need to pull together a group that will help us make that decision so we get stakeholder input.
Yeah. It's not going to be just Sam and Mitch.
No, it's not going to just be Sam and Mitch.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions? I'm going to unmute.
Anybody have any questions about that? All right.
Okay, I'm going to mute everybody. Oh, okay, sorry. We'll start over.
Okay. I didn't realize we were muted. Sorry about that. No, we're still here. So what I was saying was, this next conversation we're about to have is very important, and we need people to really listen carefully to this and make sure that this issue is corrected in the field, because if it's not, it has a significant potential to have an impact on our funding. So what I was saying was that in conversation with the folks who distribute the state school fund and who provide the allocation to LTCT through the state school fund, we came to the realization that the numbers, the slot counts that we get from the agencies and the capacity counts that you provide us every month on your attendance sheets are not lining up with the ADM report that you folks send in to the state for the ADM, because these kids are not being what's the word I'm looking for, Sam?
They're not being accounted for.
They're not being reported properly. So what we're finding is that there are folks in the field who, and you can see from the slide that Sam has up, that it is absolutely imperative that all students who are in a long-term care and treatment program that's being served by ODE be marked, their resident district and resident school be 3559. That is the specific code. The concern here is that if the long-term care and treatment, Sam and I, have a slot count number, and that varies significantly from what ADM is reporting, the utilization number, that if we are monitored or if we are audited, that the auditors, and it could very well be the Secretary of State's office, may very well tell the state, we have to use the number that they consider to be more accurate, which is the ADM collection. So it is absolutely imperative that, again, if you have students that are in a ODE-sponsored long-term care and treatment program, those students must be reported in the ADM collection as resident district, resident school 3559. If they're not, and there continues to be a significant discrepancy between the numbers reported in the ADM collection and the numbers that we report to the state school fund folks for our LTCT allocation, there's going to have to be some kind of reconciliation. And at this point in time, it would result in a significant hit to the LTCT budget.
Right. So in other words, although we send the money out based on classroom, teacher, and EA salary, we continue to get our revenue based on student count and by slot. So if the money that we get from the state school fund and the general fund shrinks, then we have no choice than to shrink the allocation
and to pass that along to you guys.
Right.
I understand that's new information, you guys, to some folks, so we're going to open it up here and see if anybody has any questions about that or if we need to clarify.
Right, and that's why in February, after we did preliminary contract amounts, I had to ask everybody to send in their capacity counts, because by the counts that we were showing, we would have been greatly underfunded. That's why I emailed certain individuals and said, I need your new updated numbers immediately. And
so given what we just discussed, are there any questions that anyone has, or does anyone need any clarification on that?
And I'm going to show you the spreadsheet that I get. So this is a spreadsheet that I received from Linda O'Halloran that your data people send to Linda every month. So from there, we get the capacity and then the average enrollment, and then by looking at the bottom, our capacity, like when we have capacity of 917, our average enrollment is 623.
And the state school fund folks or the potential auditors may look at that and say, you may need to get closer to using your utilization rate, which is the 628, than using the actual slot counts. And we don't want to get there. So we need to make sure that everyone is reporting their numbers accurately in order to assure, and especially moving forward, as we all know, with the PERS crisis pending, dollars are going to get tighter, and there's a possibility that folks are going to start looking for places to save $1 here and save $1 there, and we don't want to be the ones who end up losing money because our counts aren't accurate.
Right. And if you think,
let's just stop and let folks. Are there any questions out there or comments that people have regarding what we've discussed?
You unmute?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Yeah, you're unmuted. Just jump in. Okay, I guess that was clear then. If folks do have questions specifically about, perhaps who's putting kids in ADM or whatever, just reach out to us. But at this point in time, we want to make the point that it's imperative that the kids get reported in the ADM collection appropriately.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a question that came to chat was, did Sam already contact folks about this? Yes, I already contacted certain folks, and then and here I tracked the communication where I received emails or phone calls for those individuals. So for 16, 17, we're in the clear. But we had to, I was kind of panicking. We might not have enough money. So that's why I went to everybody.
Okay. All right, let's move on.
Yep, we're going to move on.
Here's additional info, and again, this is additional info if you have questions about the ADM reporting and how it affects you, or if there's trainings, if you need folks that need assistance with this. And again, like we talked about, there's discrepancy between the ADM collection and our reporting of slot counts could have impact our funding.
Yep, and the info, our ADM person, Beth Blumenstein, created this sheet for everybody, and then that was emailed out this morning, and that's the link here that talks about the different scenarios.
Perfect.
Yep. Okay. Okay, so Mitch says this is mine. Thanks. Okay, so the budget, I'm going to send an email out because although I asked for budgets, I think the first week of May, I got clarification from Beyond Us that and Beyond OD that we need our budgets sooner. So we need the budgets for long-term care treatment, data and YSEP for 16-17 by Monday, April 18. And that is so that we, from now on, DOJ wants us to send the budgets along with the amendments. So
I'm going to jump in there so people can understand. The way that the process works at ODE is we have contracts that we do with you guys. All of those contracts go over to the Department of Justice, who is essentially our legal representative, and they review each of the contracts to determine legal sufficiency. In other words, their job is to make sure the contract is written in such a way as to protect ODE so that if we determine that a contractor is not providing the appropriate services, we have recall. So they've asked under their guidance that we provide a budget so they can look at each contract amount, because we always give you a maximum amount that you can spend, and they want to have an idea of how that money is being allocated. So this is not something that ODE is asking for. This is something the Department of Justice is asking for. And if we don't have these contracts to them in a timely fashion and they go past the July 1st deadline, then it creates an entirely different set of circumstances that will delay the contract. So we tried to push that date as far away as we could, but DOJ pushed back and said, if you don't have that information to us sooner, we can't guarantee that we'll have the contracts approved by July 1st. So unfortunately, that's why we're going to the April 18th deadline.
Yeah. Okay, so someone asked, repeat date and time for the ADM training. It's out here.
There it is. It looks like it's April 13th. And that link there will give you will get you to the site where you can register or find out how you can call in for it.
Yep. Okay. Okay, so we already talked about the revenue, how there's a
sheets.
Yep, and how it's different, but that's why it's very important that you still send in the monthly information sheets to ODE, and then it's going to be a new person starting from next week, and I'll send that out in an email. It'll be Mariana Turnbull. Starting for the March data sheet, send it to Mariana. As Linda O'Halloran has other duties now, so it's those monthly data sheets are very critical for our budgeting. And as we talked about, general fund, student serve, state school fund slot count, and then that's what we need. Now, for 17-19, if you want your budget, your contract amounts in March of 2017, in reality, just like last year, we're not going to know our budget until June 2017 and we may not have a good picture. So we're wondering, do you guys want us to lowball it? How do you guys want your contract amounts in March 2017?
Hold on a second. Let me throw in some clarification.
Yeah.
A moment of transparency from ODE. As many of you know, with the PERS crisis pending, this morning the Oregon University system sent in a request to the legislature for a $100 million bump in order to cover the costs of the PERS increases that are being anticipated in next biennium. They're already getting their request in. The last number that I saw suggested that based on the PERS impact, there could be a $1 billion shortfall in funding for the state for programs like ours. Knowing that going into the 17-19 biennium, we're left with two choices. We can either continue to move forward with the MSL model that was identified in the budget note that we have in place now, 1 teacher and 2 aides, knowing, and we've already shared this information with the legislature through the Legislative Fiscal Office, that will result, if the PERS increase goes up, anticipated the 24%, that will result in a deficit for LTCT of around $14 million. We know there's not much chance that we're going to get that $14 million given the circumstances. So one of the things that we are looking at is in order to stay within our budget, which we're legally required to do, we may have to what's what I'm looking for, gear down to 1 teacher and 1 aide. If we did funding based on 1 teacher and 1 aide, we could stay within our current revenue budget and move forward. So when Sam talks about lowballing, there may be a possibility that we're getting back to you, hopefully by December, to give you folks a heads up to let you know that and again, this is a decision that I have to make as the director, that if the writing on the wall is that we are not going to receive the funding, or the legislature doesn't come up with a solution for filling that gap, then we may have to change the model that we're serving. We have every intention of staying at least with the model, because we believe that the one benefit to this has been, now that we are providing the funding and assuring that there is 1 teacher in every classroom, and that to me is the key piece to this whole thing. So we want to continue the model, but the funding may not support the model the way the budget note was written, 1 teacher and 2 aides. So there's a possibility that we may have to change the model or modify the model. And we will let you know as soon as we can whether or not we're going to have to do that, because again, being practitioners ourselves, we know the timelines around notifying staff if they're going to be non-renewed for the following year. And unfortunately, like I say, this is a moment of transparency. It's a shot in the dark for us, because we really don't know what's going to happen, but we don't want to surprise you guys either. We want to give you as much of a heads up as we can about what's going on and where things are going. So I'd like to pause there and give folks a chance to ask any questions or clarification if they need it. So if you have any questions or comments, please, this will be the moment.
Well, they were saying like that we're not reporting accurately.
No, they're saying that some people weren't, but the people that weren't, they've contacted.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so we're going to go ahead with that in mind. Like I said, we will let you know, and we will keep you informed. By all means we can, to let you know what's going on. If the funding doesn't look like it's going to be coming through and we have to adjust the model, we will let you know as soon as we can. Okay, keep going, Sammy.
The lengthening of the school year. So the earlier email said we don't have additional funds to support going beyond the 180 school year. So if you have sufficient funds, okay, here's a question. If you adjust the model, will there be option of emergency funds and other ways to pay for our aides?
Unfortunately, the reality is if we have to change the model to one teacher and one aide, that's because we'll just barely have enough money to cover one teacher and one aide and still provide some kind of funding for other program costs. Because we understand, again, as we said this year, we understand that there's more to this program than just salary and benefits for the teachers and the aides. There has to be some money for the program. And what we're talking, in order to balance our budget, we're going to have to reduce the emergency fund to the bare minimum just to cover the actual emergencies that have been, that we have to provide services for or provide financial support for. And we'll basically look over the last 3 or 4 years to determine what that number will be. This year, even though the law says we can take up to 5%, this year we took between 3.5% and 4% as a set aside. I sincerely doubt with our funding, if it goes the direction we think it's going to go, worst case scenario, that we would even be able to do that. It would probably be closer to 2 to 2.5%, in which case then we would be distributing to you guys 97 to 98% of the funds for the actual support of the. You wouldn't have the emergency funds to put in to cover the cost for additional aides. Other questions, concerns? Okay, Sam?
No other questions? No. Okay, so, back to lengthening of the school year. So, everyone has to remember, summer school is not funded from the state school fund. That's why we have to say it's lengthening the school year, adding school days to your calendar, where they're going to earn credit during the school year. It's not enrichment, or it's not arts and crafts or whatever. It's additional instruction. So now the CT and the DICP funds lapse June 30th of this year, and for 16-17 it'll also lapse June 30th. So if you're going to go July and August of 2017, you're going to be using 17-19 contract funds. 17-18. Yeah, 17-18 contract funds. So if you are going to lengthen the school year, please be aware of that. And but then for 15-16, your OP other program costs, they will not lapse. If you didn't spend all your OPC funds, you can carry that amount into 16-17, but your teacher and your EA funds will lapse June 30th of this year.
And then we will take that, whatever you don't spend, we will use to reallocate the following year for all of the funds.
Right, and that's the thing. And I tell people, the way we generate our reserves, or like a lot of our back emergency funds, is unspent funds from the contractors. Like right now, we're supplementing the 15-17 biennia with funds that were unspent from 13-15. So if you don't need to spend it all, please do not spend all of your funds.
And again, I want to make the point here. This program does not have an indirect or an overhead that ODE takes out of it. Whatever we don't hold back for emergency funds, we distribute 100% of the remaining funds to you guys. So if you don't spend it, it's not like ODE is going to take it and keep it. We will turn around and reallocate it to you the following year in your budgets. So again, it isn't like a zero-sum gain where if you don't spend it, you lose it, because you will get it back in funding the following year. And again, that's something we're taking very seriously here when we're looking at how much of an emergency fund to keep aside. We're looking very carefully at the amount of money that we're allocating to you guys. So 100% of the funds are put back into the program, whether it be the 2 or 3% that goes into the emergency funds, or the other 97 or 98% that gets allocated to you guys.
A question came in via the chat. What is the minimum number of school days for LTCT contract? If you're a regular 5-day week, it's 170 to 180. And you just have to follow the regular 990 rule and 900 for elementary to middle school. So that's, but then for high school, 5.5 hours, and for elementary school, I think it's 5 hours a day. And we have to do that not only for our state school funding, but to continue the Title I-D funding. Any other questions? No? Okay. Monitoring tool, as we emailed and discussed, it'll be used for 16, 17, and we're going to use it as a single tool for long-term care and treatment and Title I-D. And then later on this spring, we'll come up with an on-site monitoring schedule where next year and the following year, we're going to visit, or I or somebody will visit every single long-term care and treatment site with using this tool. Now, and then we have to it's not, the tool is not a gotcha tool. The tool is, you know, to help improve and for you to look at to see if you're meeting all the federal and state requirements.
Sam is right. The tool was developed because we have two responsibilities. One is we are required by the feds to monitor your programs to make sure you're meeting the requirements of the resources and the funding that we receive. But on the other hand, it really is a monitoring tool that looks at best practices. So the reason we gave you the monitoring tool this year without applying it is to give you an opportunity to see what the expectations are, so that it gives you time to say, look, I know we're deficit here. We need to work on improving this so that before we do come in to actually use the monitoring tool, you guys already know what it is we're going to be looking at, and you already know what it is, what the expectations are and the requirements of you are. If you didn't get the monitoring tool, if you're not sure what we're talking about, or if you believe that you would like to ask questions or have concerns about the monitoring tool, please reach out to us and let us know.
Yep.
Okay, well, so we got a couple of comments here. Roll up. There was one above that.
The monitoring tool was sent this morning, and I'll send it out again when I send out the link for the recording.
This, Brian, the answer to your question is this was not just a YSEP tool. This is a Title I-D, which covers both YSEP and long-term care and treatment. So even though it may look like a YSEP tool, and there may be parts of it in there that are related to the Youth Corrections Education Program, obviously we aren't going to hold you accountable for those parts. The parts we will hold you accountable for will be the IDEA and the Title I-D parts. So what we did is we tried to create a single monitoring tool. We actually took 4 different monitoring tools and condensed them into one monitoring tool, not only for our benefit, but also for the benefit of the field. So again, if there's things in there that are obviously not related to your program, they're youth corrections programs, just disregard them, because that's what we're going to do when we come monitor your program, obviously. So, I mean, again, it's pretty cut and dry. You should be able to look at that monitoring tool and identify what parts are related to you and what parts aren't. But yes, it is a tool because 1D also it covers YSEP, Youth Corrections Education. We just included that in the single monitoring tool.
Yep. And it's simple for our contractors, because we have some contractors that have multiple programs.
Yes, they do.
So it's like they said, like, you know what, we don't want one monitoring tool for this program and another monitoring tool. You know, if the funding requirements are the same, just create one tool. And then if you don't do well, or if there's some deficiency, it's not like we're gonna dock your contract amount or bang you over the head or anything. It's a self-improvement tool.
So monitoring, no, the monitoring will begin in the fall of next year. We will be sending out in the next month or two. Sam and I need to sit down and come up with a calendar about when we're going to go do on-site monitoring. And so the monitoring calendar will begin in September, the beginning of the school year, and will run through the next 2 years, because this monitoring tool covers Title I-D. And what Title I-D says, and we're in the first year of the allocation for Title I-D, is that we must monitor on-site every site at least once in that 3-year cycle. So we gave you this year in order to have the monitoring tool to look at it and work with it, and then so we're going to kind of put us in a bind, because now we're going to have to do all the monitoring in the last 2 years.
It's just doable.
Oh yeah, it's doable. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we get paid for. So they basically will be starting in the fall. The next two school years, we'll be coming out and doing the monitoring.
Yeah.
And again, if you have questions about the monitoring tool, or you have concerns, or you don't understand which parts of it apply, reach out to us and ask us. We'll let you know.
Yeah. And as a question came out, when would the calendar will come out shortly in about a month or two?
Yeah, hopefully by the end of this month, so you guys have a heads up of when we're coming.
Yep.
Yeah, we've just been working with. Right now, our heads have been buried in the funding piece, and so that's kind of next on our list is to look at the monitoring piece.
Right.
Okay.
Remember, don't look at it, but then don't really stress out about it or lose sleep over it.
Yeah, we're not, because I think, Sam, I really want to emphasize that when we come to your site, we're not coming to your sites to do monitoring to get you. We're coming to the sites to help you identify areas where you might need improvement, and then it's our job to help provide the technical assistance or support that you need to create that improvement, because we're all in this thing together. I mean, basically what we want to do is make sure that, one, we're meeting the federal requirements because we all know they're there, but also to provide the best services we can for our kiddos. And so, again, we don't see ourselves as the monitoring police. We see ourselves as a resource to you guys in meeting our obligations and your obligations. If we identify areas where you need improvement, fine, then let's figure out how to make that improvement.
Yeah. So,
any other questions about the monitoring? Okay, that's it. Any other questions about anything LTCT? Either what we've talked about today or any other questions? Okay, here we go. The funding for OPCs does not cover costs for administrative oversight, online educational programs, supplies, indirects, ascending, etc. Will this funding level change in the near future? Well, I hate to react that way, but boy, I'll be honest with you. Again, I'm telling you what we did, basically following the budget note that came to us from the legislature, which essentially said, as legislature, this is how we want you to fund this program. We allocated 97% of the dollars that we received. Now, we don't have any choice unless you guys want to, I mean, you're going to have to absorb the cost somewhere. Whether we didn't give you the adequate funding to pay for the actual salary and benefits of the teachers and the aides, and we put it into the other program costs, you still would have ended up paying for it somewhere out of your funds. And I wish we could tell you that somehow we had this, if ODE could print money, okay, fine, we print money. Unfortunately, that's not an option. We allocate all the funds that we have. And we felt when we looked at this program and talked to folks last year and moving forward, that the bulk of the cost is in the salaries. So we will continue to make sure that we provide the funding in your contracts to cover the actual costs of your salaries for the teachers and the aides. If there's money left over if we have reserves going into the next school year, those monies will be allocated in the other program cost slot. So let's say, for example, that we have a school district where the contract was for $100,000, and based on their estimates, their salaries only came in at $90,000. Well, that $10,000 will be turned around and put back into the allocations for the following year, which means that your OPC costs, you may get a little bit more than what you did this year. But unfortunately, no, we do not have additional funding. We don't have additional funding sources, which is why, going back to earlier in the conversation, it is absolutely imperative that you're coding these kids properly in the ADM collection, because anything that could potentially impact our funding, reduce it, will have a significant impact on the program. And unfortunately, the way the law is written, the school district where the facility resides is required to provide the educational services, whether ODE is providing the 100% of the funding or not. And we don't have any control over that. Our funding is dictated to us by law, whether it be the general fund that comes from the legislature or the drawdown that we make from the state school fund. We don't have a lot of flexibility in being able to play with those numbers. So unfortunately, the answer is, as much as we would like to, we don't have additional funding to provide. The legislature wanted a review of the funding model. Has that happened? Yes, we did a report, and we shared that report with the legislature, the Ways and Means Committee, at the end of the short session, and they accepted the report as it was. They were very pleased with the progress that we made, and they basically, the response from the Ways and Means Committee was, we expect you to continue this program. And they did give us the caveat, because we were very clear to them moving forward that if we continued this model, that there would need to be additional funding, and if they didn't provide that additional funding, then ODE would at its discretion modify the model to fit within our budget, which is what we've already talked about here today. We must follow the budget note because it is part, oh, okay, yeah, I know, Sam put that in. Yeah, and unfortunately, that is it. It is part of the law. It was part of the bill that was passed with our funding, and so the budget note acts as a directive to ODE from the legislature, and we all know the legislatures they're the ones that control the purse strings, and they control the direction that we do, and they control the laws and the dictates to the way ODE does its program. So, I mean, I wish we had more, but unfortunately we don't. Any other questions? Comments, concerns? I mean, I would encourage you that if you have a relationship with your legislator, have a conversation with them about long-term care and treatment and your concerns around the fact that you're having to spend general fund dollars for a program that they basically have by law, put the responsibility on you. We're not opposed to that. I mean, again, ODE, unfortunately, because we're part of the governor's office now, we have to remain neutral when it comes to any legislative action or any legislative information. We have to remain neutral unless we get permission from the governor's office to advocate. So it really ties our hands. All right, if there's no other questions, thank you very much for joining us. I would anticipate that probably, what did we, in March, that maybe sometime before the end of the school year, if we have information, we will do another webinar. Otherwise, we will do one first thing in the fall when we come back. If you have any questions or concerns, please do not hesitate to reach out to us and let us know. We're always available to answer questions. And this recording will be posted on YouTube, as Sam always does, and he'll send you the link when he posts it.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye-bye.